Alright, this is Jahangir from Medporium, and today we have part 1 of our lymphatic and immune system unit, in which we will have an introduction to the lymphatic system. To start, we need to understand the lymphatic system. Now, the lymphatic system is a network of vessels that are in every tissue and organ of the body that transport a fluid that is known as lymph. We'll discuss lymph later. Now, the system can also produce, store, and carry immune cells. Here's a picture of what the lymphatic system may look like. Now, in the lymphatic system, we have 4 major components. The first includes lymph, which is a clear colorless fluid that travels through the lymphatic vessels. The second includes lymphatic vessels, which transport our lymph. The third includes our lymphatic tissue, which protects us against foreign invaders. And the fourth and final component in our lymphatic system includes our lymphatic organs, which can produce immune cells. For now, we will discuss the transportation of lymph through our lymphatic vessels. One thing to note is that all of these components perform 3 main functions: fluid recovery and drainage to reabsorb excess fluid from the body's tissues and drain it into the bloodstream, immunity to detect and attack certain foreign intruders from causing harm, and lipid absorption to absorb dietary lipids that are too large to enter the bloodstream. These functions are the reason why our lymphatic system is very crucial for our body to function properly. So let's discuss lymph and our lymphatic vessels as it pertains to the lymphatic system. This diagram shows our lymphatic system in association with our circulatory system. Now, in our lymphatic system, our lymph flows one way from our lymphatic capillaries all the way to the collecting ducts. We need to start this discussion at the lymphatic capillaries. This diagram shows our lymphatic capillaries. Now, one of the functions of the lymphatic system that we discussed includes fluid recovery. Now, in the human body, our arteries break down to smaller arteries, then arterioles, and then blood capillaries. These blood capillaries are a little bit porous, allowing some fluid and proteins to seep into the body's interstitial tissues. The lymphatic capillaries capture that leftover fluid through overlapping edges of endothelial cells that act as mini valves, opening and closing to push that fluid from the body's interstitial tissues into the lymphatic vessels. This fluid is known as our lymph, and it'll travel throughout our lymphatic system. Our lymph flows due to the pulsation our arteries give off, as this pressure is very high to move lymph throughout the lymphatic system. The lymphatic vessels also rely on skeletal movement, much like our veins, in pushing the lymph through the lymphatic valves found in the lymphatic collecting vessels. Now, once our lymph has been captured, our lymphatic capillaries will converge to form lymphatic collecting vessels, and our lymph will travel through these lymphatic collecting vessels and empty at lymph nodes. We will discuss lymph nodes more thoroughly, but to summarize, lymph nodes are a bean-like structure that filter through the lymph to identify any foreign pathogens and debris. This is where our second function of the lymphatic system, which is immunity, comes into play. Once our lymph has passed the lymph nodes, they will travel through the lymphatic collecting vessels once again until our lymphatic collecting vessels form larger lymphatic trunks, which are just larger lymphatic vessels. Now, these larger lymphatic trunks will converge to form our 2 collecting ducts. Now, there are 2 different collecting ducts. First collecting duct is known as our right lymphatic duct, and the second is known as our thoracic duct. Both ducts drain at the subclavian vein. However, the right lymphatic duct receives lymph from the right arm, the right side of the thorax, and the right side of your head and neck, while the thoracic duct receives lymph elsewhere. For review, let's discuss the route of the lymphatic system, and that starts from our lymphatic capillaries to our collecting vessels, to our 6 different lymphatic trunks, to our collecting ducts, and finally to our subclavian vein. Keep in mind that our lymph will pass through lymph nodes along the way. In all, our lymphatic system moves one way, collecting excess fluid from our body's interstitial tissues left off by the blood capillaries, which passes through our lymphatic vessels and all the way back to our bloodstream through our subclavian veins. Alright, so now let's discuss lymphatic tissue. Lymphatic tissue is composed of a collection of lymphocytes, which are just white blood cells in connective tissue. A primary example of lymphatic tissue is known as mucosa-associated lymphatic tissue, or just MALTs for short. MALTs is seen in the gastrointestinal tract and the nasopharynx. The lymphocytes that are housed in the mucosa-associated lymphatic tissues can form dense concentrated areas known as lymphatic nodules or follicles. An example includes the Peyer's patch in the digestive system, which is associated with lipid absorption. You could think of the mucus-associated lymphatic tissue as checkpoints throughout the body detecting unwanted foreign pathogens. Our tonsils, for example, prevent pathogens from spreading throughout our body. Within the lymphatic tissue, there are 6 different types of lymphatic cells. The first type of lymphatic cells are known as the natural killer cells, or just NK cells for short. These are large lymphocytes that attack and dismantle bacteria, transplanted tissue, and cancerous cells. They are known as natural killer cells for their ability to naturally kill any foreign cell without needing an antigen. These cells only destroy. The second type of lymphatic cells are known as T lymphocytes, or T cells for short. These are lymphocytes that mature in the thymus, and unlike natural killer cells, they look for an antigen in a foreign cell. These cells like to search and destroy, unlike the natural killer cells who only destroy. The third type of lymphatic cells are known as B lymphocytes, or B cells for short. B cells secrete antibodies to fight infection, and they mature in the bone marrow. The fourth type of lymphatic cells are known as macrophages. These are very large cells that evolve from monocytes and enter the bloodstream. The macrophages phagocytize or eat tissue debris, dead neutrophils, and other materials. The fifth type of lymphatic cells are known as dendritic cells. These are mobile antigen presenting cells, or APC for short, that perform receptor-mediated endocytosis rather than phagocytosis in order to expose the antigen of a particular cell. Now, antigen-presenting cells present the antigen of a particular foreign cell that may bring harm, usually by destroying and exposing the antigen, to alert the immune system of any intruders in which our T cell will come in and destroy that foreign cell. Antigen-presenting cells include macrophages, dendritic cells, B cells, and reticular cells, which is our sixth and final type of cell. Reticular cells are connected stationary cells that provide the framework for many of our lymphatic organs and tissues. They are also stationary antigen-presenting cells, meaning they do not move around the bloodstream. Alright, so now let's discuss the 5 different lymphatic organs in the human body, and that starts by the red bone marrow. In our skeletal system unit, we discuss where the red bone marrow is located. Now, the red bone marrow is a soft, loosely organized, highly vascular tissue that is involved in hematopoiesis. The red bone marrow is where many lymphocytes are created, such as the B lymphocytes and the T lymphocytes. However, the T lymphocytes will mature in the thymus, and the B lymphocytes will mature in the red bone marrow. Reticular cells reside in this area and secrete colony-stimulating factors that produce lymphocytes. The second lymphatic organ we have is known as our thymus. Now, the thymus is a gland that is anterior towards the aortic arch and behind the breastbone. At infancy, the thymus is large to provide immunity for the infant, but as we get older, the thymus shrinks since we have sufficient immunity. Our thymus serves one primary function, and that is T lymphocyte maturation. The thymus also secretes the hormones thymosin and thymopoietin, which influence T lymphocyte activity. Now, the red bone marrow and the thymus are primary lymphatic organs due to their ability to produce immune cells and help them become immunocompetent, which is the ability to recognize an antigen and respond to it. The third lymphatic organ is our lymph nodes. Now, our lymph nodes are the most numerous lymphatic organs in our body, and they serve 2 functions. 1, to cleanse lymph, and 2 is the site of lymphocyte activation. Essentially, B and T lymphocytes reside in this area, filtering out lymph to detect foreign pathogens as lymph enters through the afferent vessels and exits through the efferent vessels. The fourth lymphatic organ is known as our tonsils. Now, as we discussed before, our tonsils are dense masses of lymphocytes known as lymphatic follicles. Our tonsils reside at the end of the oral cavity to the entrance of the pharynx. The tonsils guard against ingestion and inhalation of pathogens that could bring harm to the body. The fifth and final lymphatic organ is known as our spleen. The spleen is the largest lymphatic organ in our body. There are 2 main types of tissue in the spleen. The first is known as white pulp, and the second tissue is known as the red pulp. In the white pulp, lymphocytes and macrophages monitor for any pathogens in the bloodstream of the spleen. The red pulp are just blood-filled capillaries, also known as venous sinuses. The lymph nodes, tonsils, and the spleen are secondary lymphatic organs because immunocompetent cells reside here after they have become mature. And unfortunately, that wraps up part 1 of our lymphatic and immune system unit, in which we had an introduction to the lymphatic system. In this introduction, we discussed the 4 major components of the lymphatic system, the 3 main functions of the lymphatic system, the route of lymph throughout the lymphatic system, lymphatic tissue and lymphatic cells, and our 5 lymphatic organs. And as always, a Pomodoro day will make you doctor someday. I'll see you next time.